All right, let's start. Before we begin, I hope you guys had a chance to download the workbook, which might help guide this particular workshop. It has these 10 steps, and this workbook is meant for you to go and after this webinar, go out there and observe your garden. Use that workbook to help you. Hopefully, even now at the end of this talk, you could give a little bit of a rough draft of what that garden design will look like at the end of this call. So, and here's what to expect. We're going to do we've done a few introduction to our work, permaculture, and then go right into the 10 crucial steps. And I will have I will be singing a song that helps you remember the 10 steps. And if you can guess what that song is, you get a free packet of seeds from us. So hang on tight. So we are Permaculture Gardens. We educate, inspire, and nurture a global community of families who provide themselves with food, medicine, and spiritual connection through ecological gardening. And we do this because we want to teach and discover how growing holistically leads to freedom and abundance. What got us into gardening was first our kids, our health reasons. My husband had like severe, every time he'd have like some food poisoning, some digestive issue, the first few months of our marriage. And then our kids had really severe allergies. I wrote about that in the last blog we had. Second, environmental reasons. We wanted to be good stewards of the planet, good stewards of this earth. And we wanted to be able to meditate and contemplate God's nature, God's creation, and his laws in the garden. So these are the three things that continue to feed our souls as well as we feed our bodies. And I would love to know why you all are here and why do you grow? So you want to pop in the chat or unmute yourself. It'll be great to hear. Anyone? Erica, I hope you're not driving now. But if you can unmute or tell us, it'd be great to know your reasons. So as I wait for your responses, because it might take a while to ponder them. Yeah, Sharon?
Well, I think I agree with a lot of your reasons. And I also think that it's to know where our food comes from and to be able to build the soil and know what's going into our bodies. It's therapy. It's it's kind of a restorative time. I mean, not only for the earth, but for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We need that sunshine, just like the plants do. We need to be grounded and out there and working the soil and just slowing down, right? I feel like that's a great reason, and to know that where our food comes from. Absolutely. Gardening feeds my soul, soil, and my body. That's wonderful, Sue. I garden to try to be independent when I grow up, retire. I want to be a farmer. Come on, Erica. You can be a farmer even before you retire. That's what we're doing now. I'm a microgreens farmer. I supply microgreens to restaurants and cafes around the area. So, and you can farm for yourself, your family. So we begin with asking, what is permaculture? We are called permaculture gardens, but why did we choose this particular method? Or what is this anyways? Is it a method? Is it a grower? Well, it's best to see this question in the light of its opposite. What is the conventional system of agriculture currently looking like? So has anybody heard of The Story of Stuff by Annie Leonard? There's some YouTube videos a few years ago. This is, oops, might have gone too far. This is Annie Leonard. I think she's the Greenpeace. Oops, I just came out of my presentation. She's the Greenpeace president right now. And she created a video, a 10-minute video, explaining how we create things or how we purchase things, and how that system is very linear. And so let's say this is the story of the stuff that we buy. Let's say a toy, right? As toy is manufactured, most likely from China, extracted from the ground using extractive processes where we extract energy from the earth to produce it, then we use energy again to distribute it, send it flying or shipping it to our big box smarts, where we consume it, and it lives in our house for an average of 6 months before we throw them out. And that's the story of stuff that we buy. Permaculture is not like that. It's not a linear man-made system. Permaculture is a cyclical economy. It's a design system rather than a method or one kind. There's several methods under its umbrella that one could use to live out or do permaculture. But our definition is it's a design system based on observation, which is why it's great to be out in the garden, which ties your home with your garden, with you and all the animals, ultimately with a whole community where we're working with nature and natural laws. It's a design system based on observation. So our friend Amy Strauss, she's a permaculturalist in the Midwest, and she has a book called 10th Acre Farm. She likes to say, all you need to do to grow a garden is 15 minutes a day. And 7 of those 15 minutes is spent observing. 7 of those 15 minutes is spent observing. So yeah, that's definitely where your soul is fed. So here's another example of a cyclical loop, is very much the case in composting. This is my son, who's now 14. He's he's a little bigger than that. But here we were in our backyard less than a year ago. This was our backyard then in our tiny townhouse, very shady. And we were composting using this pallet method, and this I still compost with using that now. And this is a cyclical method. In fact, these are some kids that we teach so back to this method, it's cyclical because instead of doing zero waste, we're going negative waste. We're doing negative waste. We are putting back to the earth that which we've taken from it, and it's creating more food for us, and richer food. And here we are digging Jerusalem artichokes with the kids in our middle school. This Jerusalem artichokes, they just come back every year. So another cyclical way. This is a lasagna garden. So this is a way that we garden where we're not having any chemical inputs. There's hardly any, we haven't hauled in topsoil for the last 2 years. We just keep on. What we do use is straw if we have it, or if we mulch down some of the crops, then it becomes another layer of straw. And then these are the Jerusalem artichokes that we got. They just keep on coming for you guys. So permaculture is based also, another thing about permaculture that makes it unique is that it's based on ethics. So earth care is one, people care is another, and fair share. So earth care, we take care of the earth. People care, we don't exploit anybody in the creation of our organic food. And fair share, whatever abundance that we have, we try to share it as equitably as we can. So we live this in our growing our crops, and also in our business. We try to live cooperative values so that we are truly permaculture. So here's the song that we're going to go to. This first slide is the first of the 10 steps. If you know the song, you go ahead and type it in the chat box as fast as you can, and we will get you your free packet of seeds. First thing is to observe. That's the first part. So it's named that tune. So observation is that key thing that most organic gardeners forget about, observing. So can you spot a bobcat in this photo? Anyone? Tell me if you see it. Oh, Deli's seen this video already. Seen this presentation already, but she's coming in to join us. Welcome, Deli. Can you spot the bobcat in this picture? Anyone? I was telling, no one. I think Deli, you might be able to, since this is the same picture I used at the Mother Earth News Fair a few weeks ago. No one. So observation is key to doing your organic gardening. the first thing that we forget is to observe our gardens. And to keenly observe it takes time. And if anyone is still wondering, it's over here is the bobcat. And actually, when I give this presentation, I can never find the bobcat from the screen. I can only see it when I'm on a webinar. This song of the 10 steps is based on a scheme or something that was developed by the Australian farmer and engineer P.A. Yeomans in the 1950s. And this is what I'm singing to you now. It's called The Scales of Permanence, perhaps with a few additions from my own teacher. But P.A. Yeomans also designed something called keyline design, which is landscaping so that we maximize the use of water resources, especially in the dry lands as America continues to get more and more desertified. It would really benefit you to observe when you do have a downpour, where does the water pool? Where does it stay and become soggy? Where could you capture it? And then how could we create or design points in the landscape in our backyard so that we can capture the water passively into our gardens? So first thing is to observe, to think holistically. Your garden is not in isolation. And when we think about our whole property, not just as one kidney-shaped garden in a sunny corner, but as the whole, how it's connected to the other parts, how it's connected to our neighbor's yard, how the traffic on the road helps us realize we might need a screen. And then when we think of that, I'm looking at my road right now, we need a thicker screen. And when we think of what to put there as our screen, we can think, oh, it might as well be an edible hedge, right? Why only something that's an ornamental, which is that's currently growing in my yard. And so there's this concept in permaculture circles of the 7 layers of every forest, or the 7 layers of a food forest. And these 7 layers, some have argued that they're more than these. They're absolutely true. You can have more layers, are basically just the physical niches that you want to look at when you are designing your gardens. So when we think holistically, we don't just even look at one layer. No, we're not just looking at 2D. We're trying to go 3D by thinking, okay, there's an overstory perhaps. Is there or is there not an overstory? So you could X that out if your garden is super small, like ours used to be. Is there a place for me to grow vines where it makes sense so that it can shade me during the summer when it's super hot and the sun is high in the sky? Or can I grow it up a tree because I have a very good tree that would be a great trellis for it? Is there, do I have good ground cover? Ground cover is essential in dry lands because that will help reduce your evaporation and keep that moisture that is already there in. Plus, the plants themselves regulate the moisture control, the nutrient control of what they can uptake and what they would, what the bacterial life, they support the bacterial life as well. So the more you have stuff growing, the better it is. No bare soil is what we like to say. An understory layer is something like, this is a lemon tree. In your areas, in our Pennsylvania area, you could probably get away with pawpaw trees. So think, especially if you have very little time, Erica, think of the perennials that you're putting in. And a lot of these are perennials. A shrub layer, an herbaceous layer, which just means like closer to the ground, herbs, and a root crop layer. Fill in all those niches. Sometimes you can grow alongside your root crops, or you can grow garlic in between your brassicas. And that's a great companion plant, not just because they work well together, but they work well together physically. So that's the concept, not just memorizing these companion plant models is what I'm trying to help you do, is to think, how can you take that concept or principle of filling in all different layers and find your own little guilds to create. So first thing is to observe. 3, to think holistically. 3, note your zones of use. In permaculture, we talk about zones of use as not your USDA zones. This is different from your USDA growing zones, which are also important information, but it's basically your frequency of visit. How often do you visit this particular place? I told an anecdote. I like to tell this anecdote of Bill Mollison, who says, when you wake up in the morning and you put your fuzzy slippers on and you go out to your garden to get chives for your omelet, if you come back and your slippers are wet, you've walked too far. So that's totally true of me right now, because I have cilantro growing way far away from me in the production garden, and I need my herb garden so, close at hand, even in your windowsill, even beside your kitchen, if you can manage it, so that you can be as lazy of a gardener as you want to be. The zones of use doesn't necessarily mean just like this, 1 is closest to your house, 2 is the next closest, 3, and so on and so forth. It really means how frequently do you visit. So for instance, this wildlife corridor here is right next to the house. So, and that's zone 5. They never really go there. It's like wilderness. And so they're not necessarily concentric circles. So you figure that out in your workbook when you go open this workbook and print it out. Observe your growing space, draw a rough draft of the area that you want to, of your whole property if you can. And this is made simpler if you have a plat map that you can work with. So try to draw a bigger space than just, this is the garden bed that I want to attack. Or print out 2 copies of this page so that you can have one as the zoom in page for one of the garden areas, and one is like the overall garden scheme. Now, first thing is to observe, 2 think holistically, 3 note your zones of use, 4 know your local climate. It's important to know what's happening right now in your climate, and especially as it changes. It's interesting to note, for instance, in Virginia, we never really had a snow day this whole season yet. Now it's March, so we likely will not have one. But notice, where does the wind blow in from? Where do I need to create a windbreak? Are you on the shadow side of a mountain, or are you on the windward side? And what does it mean when you do get a lot of cold air blowing in your area that you didn't have before? Where is that wind coming from? So check out your local climate. This is called lake effect, and this is current. I chose this for the Texas region. I know Delhi is here from Texas, and this is what's happened. When I came in there, super sunny, 33 degrees because of the winds coming from North Texas going down. I was in the hill country, and that created a lot of cold air. I wasn't, that was part of, maybe that's something that happens every year for you guys, but I thought that was really interesting. So first thing is to observe, 2 think holistically, 3 note your zones of use, 4 know your local climate, 5 find your microclimate. So within your particular property, you also have different climates. You have microclimates that change throughout the day even. And some of them are, if your area is facing south, then you have this whole facade. And I'm assuming everybody here is from America. If you're in Australia, it's facing north. When you're in America or North America, you get a baked house and during the hottest part of the day, which is the afternoon, or a baked air location that's facing south. So that's a microclimate that you could use to extend harvests that like the summer weather. So if you wanted to get your if you wanted to get your tomatoes started early, find that place that's the hottest part of your house where the sun is shining. Soil, what kind of soil also affects. So if you have very rich living soil, your soil is cooler than the other. Find out where in your garden do you have brown soil where it's super dry, and where is it darker and cooler. And you can stick a thermometer in there if you wanted to, but you could just feel with your hand too. Closer to cities, we have hotter climates. So as opposed to in the rural areas. So those things affect your microclimate as well. First thing is to observe, to think holistically. 3, note your zones of use. 4, know your local climate. 5, find your microclimate. 6, note topography. Now, if you do have, you can go online and find your contour lines in your property. I think you can go to NRCS and they will help you find those contour lines. This is very extreme from the Philippines. So in the Philippines, farmers for hundreds of years would terrace the mountainside because that was the only way that you could grow, is if you could terrace it. And in this way, we're capturing the water, and this is rice terraces. So we wanted to capture the water in a very, in a very meaningful way. We wanted to wallow in there, and rice grows in paddies. So this was very intentionally done. And it was only done after they observed that this was a better way to do it, right? That maybe if they flattened the land, it would help. In our case, we could do something similar, where if we find we have a flood in the back of our yard, like this is my friend's backyard before, she had a lot of flooding here in the back, in her backyard. It was all the water was going down there, and everything else was higher than this point here, which was very low in the ground. And so all the water from the neighbors and her own house, it was all pooling into there. And they were thinking, oh, we should take out a tree. There's one thing, you take out a tree, the tree is a great element to siphon all that water. It's a great whole reservoir of water. So I was telling them not to take out the tree because that would make things worse. But another thing they could do was to terrace. And here I'm using a natural shape and this spiral shape to also add to the beauty of it. So it's not just like terracing. Here in the other picture, we terrace along the contours. Here it's a smaller property, and I can sort of impose the terracing shape that I want. But this is an idea of how you could do this if you had a similar problem. So terracing, another thing is swale and berm, where instead of terracing, you're letting that water seep, stop, sink, and slowly spread, creating your own reservoir water for the plants here on the berm side. So this is, especially if you have slopes, you can create these drainage ditches called swales in a small property to guide the flow of water and to have it seep into your soil and stay there long enough that plants can take root. And when they do, then it's just a virtuous cycle. The cycle is good. It'll keep on, it's a positive cycle. They'll keep on growing. They'll keep on capturing that water for you. And usually alongside these kinds of things in larger properties, you would plant trees, because trees are what would make best use of that water. Talking about water, you will have a water calculator in your workbook. So first thing is to observe, to think holistically. 3, note your zones of use. 4, know your local climate. 5, find your microclimate. 6, note topography. How much water runs across your roof? So an herb spiral is an example of a small scale way to capture water, right? Small, this is 3 foot by 3 foot in diameter, and 3 foot high, 3 foot across. And the way that it captures is, can you guess what kind of plants would be at the very top of this herb spiral? Anyone? And you can type
Desert plants, dry plants.
Right, Judith, very good. And what would be at the bottom? Wet plants. You're on mute. Oh.
Wet plants.
Right, like mint. And on the west side which should be the hottest side. I think they
Things
have,
like rosemary.
yes, and basil. I think they put it, the rosemary. Basil is supposed to be on the west side. But yes, an herb spiral makes use of having different moisture conditions for different plants. Very good. Thank you. Thanks for interacting. I know I'm not the only one here. So if you have that workbook, go ahead and you can find out how many gallons of water you can capture in a 1-inch rain event. So even if in Colorado you don't have as much rain as the rest of the country, or Judith, where are you growing from?
Maine.
Oh, Maine, you got lots of water. So
Desert of Maine. The desert of Maine, though.
it's the desert of Maine. Oh,
Yes.
okay. Well, you will always have a lot of water, even if you just have 1 inch of rain and you have a way to capture it. So this will help you realize whether do you need to build a cistern? Do you want to just do rain barrels? And then if I do connect rain barrels, where would they go? So you can calculate how much water you need for your garden. So here's the next one. First thing is to observe, to think holistically. 3, note your zones of use. 4, know your local climate. 5, find your microclimate. 6, note topography. How much water runs across your roof? Where do people go? We're almost to the end. And if anybody has an idea what song I'm singing, please type it in the chat box or email us later your address if you know it. So access is huge. This is me drawing a school garden. This is my first school garden where I didn't know what I was doing. This is even before I became a permaculture designer. And here I am. I put all the plots all together there. This is my walkway and nowhere to expect the kids to jump over these plots. So eventually we made like a terrace staircase here that went to, it was a great outdoor classroom. This was a drawing board, a chalkboard outside, which was waterproof. And there were seats here and there were staircases here. The plots did not materialize. I mostly got daffodil growing and trees because we decided to do raised beds on this area. But this is just an example of when you design your garden to think of where do the people normally go already, where I can't stop them from going. You might as well make a path, especially if you have dogs or little children. Where does it make sense to make a path? Paths are usually at least 2.5, 3 feet to allow for a wheelbarrow, 3 feet wide to allow for a wheelbarrow to pass through, or in our case in the school, wheelchair accessibility. Position elements wisely, compost bins, closer to the house, if you're in a big place. If you're in a smaller place, you want them a little farther away because you don't want any rodents, especially if you live in the urban areas. Where would your tool shed be? Where would your trees be? So first thing is to observe, to think holistically. 3, note your zones of use. I hope you're memorizing these with me. 4, know your local climate. 5, find your microclimate. 6, note topography. How much water runs across your roof? Where do people go? Investigate the weeds that you don't know. So weeds are a great bioindicator of what kind of soil you have, whether it's alkaline, acidic, or whether it's a soil that's eroding and needs to be held in place by the weed that has sprung up there that nature is intended to heal the soil. And so now we're learning more and more. I mean, weeds initially, bane of your existence. You don't want to cultivate just weeds in your garden, of course, but where there are weeds, take a look before you pull them out and replace them with something intentional. What are they doing? What service are they already giving? Are they a legume? Are they, because sometimes we have those kinds of weeds that are legumes. Are they accumulating a lot of the nutrients from the lower layers of the soil. We call those dynamic accumulators, and bringing them up to the higher layers of the soil. Are they grasses? And that can tell you grasses have great root systems. That's why they make great straw. Like if you cut the grass down, you can use some of that cuttings for the cuttings. When you cut your grass, even in your lawns, you can use the cuttings as mulch. So making use of those things. And finally, first thing is to observe, to think holistically. 3, note your zones of use. 4, know your local climate. 5, find your microclimate. 6, note topography. How much water runs across your roof? Where do people go? Investigate the weeds that you don't know. And then finally, make it look pretty. Find a shape in your yard. It's fun to wander through these 10 steps with you. Now tell me what it means to you. So I hope that you guys got a lot from those other steps, but this one is the icing on the cake. This one is what sells your garden to your HOA when they tell you you can't grow pumpkins in your front yard because they look horrendous in your house is a townhouse. That's what we did, and we got in trouble with the HOA because of that. It really is what first draws people who don't understand what you're doing to understand that there is something deeper here. And if you can make your gardens beautiful, here are the ways that you can do them. Then you're half there. Then everything else you do, you will be approved by the HOA. You'll do with much more freedom and much more joy. So shape, find a shape in the yard that sort of ties everything together. It doesn't need to be spiral all the time. It can be squares. We have a production garden that's all raised beds and all rectangular shaped. Punctuate them with something of interest. So it's not boring. So for instance, here in the middle of this design, I think there's a little gondola here, or a bench here. So that's a punctuation. In the middle, something that is of interest that you're traveling to, right? And proportion. So I cannot grow a big pumpkin trellis in front of a tiny townhouse. Even if I want to, it looks ugly. So I should have chosen something more smaller. I could get away with doing that in the backyard though, because we have a tall townhouse, and I was aiming for I was using vertical space, which is very tall. So it was in proportion with the rest. So all these guidelines are design guidelines. If anybody here, an artist or studied art or design or graphics, these are the same principles of that being brought to your garden. Balance. So you want to have the 7 layers of the food forest is the perfect formula for creating balance. You're balancing small plants with big plants. You're balancing aromatic plants with plants that are vegetative, that are vegetables rather, and perennials. There's a balance that is right for you, right? There can be gardens that are all just floral gardens, and they can still have balance in that they're different heights and different breadths, different widths, diameters of different growing habits. So you want to achieve some sort of a diversity, but a balance in that diversity of choices of your plants. It's great if your garden has movement, so paths make that possible. Your eyes, it keeps it interesting too. Like, if you're on the ground looking here, where does this path lead to? And you never quite know where. You're like always looking, and that's that movement of the eyes from side to side is a great part of this aesthetic. And then in order for you and this is the number one mistake of most permaculture gardens, because we're always aiming for diversity so that we can create that balance in our flora and fauna. We're keeping a balance of different butterflies and insects, but also a great balance and diversity of our crops. And what happens is it gets really cluttered looking. If we just applied a little bit more of repetition, where we're repeating echinacea, which is a great, striking, beautiful purple flower, all throughout the design, or you're repeating even comfrey, or repeating a lemon tree or something of that sort, that gives you a really good calm to the eye when you look at that garden. So I'm saying all this in excitement because I'm about to design our garden. This is our deadline. Dave and my husband, Dave and I's deadline for designing our garden. Remember the workbook if you don't have it. So I wanted to ask you here at this point, what would it mean to grow your food in this way for you? What would it mean? Anybody want to unpause right now, unmute right now and tell me? Do you see yourself growing these 10 crucial steps or applying at least some of them this year? Sue, Stephen, Sharon, Judith, Erica, Deli. I'd love to hear your answers. Where would you start? Was this helpful or is this more confusing? Nobody wants to say. All right, well, feel free to pop it in if you guys are still typing, that's wonderful. Thank you. Keep popping, keep typing, and I will share something from, and I hope you hear something from someone who's in our GIY community. We want you to never grow alone. So we're big on communities, building community gardens, but building communities online of gardeners that grow. Hi. Here is one of our gardeners. This is in a gathering that we have on Zoom, that we have on celebrating our harvest. So this is Kelly.
So I was just going to show, this is not from this morning, but I picked these yesterday, the cucumbers. And then I have 3 jars of fermenting pickles going on. And then here are beans. I think I picked these beans like 2 days ago. I probably have to go pick again because there's, I'm sure, a lot more on the plants that I pick. So I got to keep up with the beans. The beans are probably, well, beans and cucumbers are probably my biggest bumper crop. They're kind of, it's hard to keep up, but it's a good problem to have. So
yes, and Kelly, next year, I didn't put this on you, but I'm going to be more demanding on everybody. But next year, we're going to start weighing our harvests, okay?
yes,
So
and I did try that. I don't think my scale was accurate. I think so. After I did it a few times, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna weigh them anymore, because it, like, one time it would be like 8 ounces, and I'd be like, okay, and then the next time it would be even more, and it would be like 6 ounces. I'd be like, I don't think that's accurate.
yeah. I mean, that's one, I guess
So
that's
I
one
was
challenge.
like, I think I need to get a new scale. Maybe that's what
Yeah.
needs to happen.
I know Andrea,
But,
you've been doing that, so that's kudos. But yeah, I just want to know because I feel like Kelly, just seeing her garden yesterday, I just feel like, wow, I wonder how many pounds this is, how much of a dent it's giving.
It's a lot. I think that has been probably the biggest win, is that, like, our grocery bill has gone down significantly. I feel like, because I don't have to buy vegetables like ever because we have so many vegetables in the back that it's like, well, or even like we were going to the farmer's market for a while before everything got going. And now I'm like, why would we go to the farmer's market? I don't need anything at the farmer's market because I have so much stuff growing already.
Oh, wow, Kelly, you are the farmer's market. Yeah, go. How do I get out of here? Now I have to push this here. There we go. Yes, so this is, I'm still waiting for your answers. For real, nobody knows what they're going to feel like, how they're gonna apply these things. I hope this has struck a chord and that this helps inspire you guys to start somewhere and start at least one of those, implementing one of those 10 crucial steps. This is a quote that I love from Jeff Lawton, who was Dave's permaculture teacher. All the world's problems can be solved in a garden. And I believe this because if you think about war, famine, lack of resources, depression, heart attack, obesity, the climate change, all of these things can be solved by growing our own food. We can contribute 30% to carbon, drawing down carbon, according to studies from Project Drawdown. So 30% is of household actions, mostly those are gardening, composting, can contribute to drawing down carbon from the atmosphere and putting them in the right places. So we have a garden challenge coming up March 20th. Is that next week? No, the week after, where we are going to challenge you to start seeds every day for 1 week. If you haven't started your seeds yet, come start these seeds with us. We also have in the future, and this is something that we do inside our GIY community. We have you know what I talked about with the layers of the food forest? We have these opportunities to collaborate with other growers around the US who are same climate as ours. We put them together and we have these sessions where we're doing a garden design, we call it Build a Guild. Because basically what this is a permaculture guild of different players, you know, creating a symphony, all of these crops working together. And then we're finding out why, not just from the layer perspective, but from how they field nutrients to one another. One is supporting them by giving nitrogen. One is a great, you know, one has a great fungal network underneath it. You know, there's another layer that you could add there. Fungal layer, aquatic layer is another layer that you could add to these layers of food forest. But we collaborate on design and we collaborate and we learn together as a group. So if you are so inclined, I invite you to check out our Grow It Yourself community. You can try it for free for a month still. We are extending that one. And see if this is a place where we have these opportunities to grow even more together. Yeah, and then you can reach out here. I'll escape now so I can stop share and here. Oh, did I miss all your answers? I've pretty much planted the raised beds I've used of in the last couple of days. I've left space for eggplant and cucumbers. The problem is getting it all used. So yeah, Judith, you're right. The problem is getting it all used. That's another challenge that we're having. How can you make the most preserving the harvest, right? How can you extend your harvest? How can you preserve your harvest? How can you give your harvest to others? And thank you for giving the homeless food that they wouldn't be able to buy because you grew it. Oh, wonderful. Less work, greater yield, staying healthy. Okay, wonderful. I'm sorry that I missed I didn't get notifications on this. So I hope that this has been helpful today. If anybody here, do you guys have any questions? Please unmute and I'm happy to answer questions. Specific ones in your garden or about the community, anything. What would you like to ask? Or even just reflections? I put the link in for the community if you want to check it out. And anyone? No questions? Well, I have a question for you. If nobody was going to answer, I love your enthusiasm and your community of practice. Kudos to you all. I think this is worthwhile. Thank you, Deli. What is one, Deli and Steve and Sharon and Sue and Erica and Judith and who am I missing? What is one takeaway that you have, if you haven't answered that yet, that you are going to? Okay, you have space for that. What is one takeaway from this workshop that you're going to work on or act on before we end? Who? No one? one takeaway. Erica, I'm going to start calling people. Oh, here we go. This webinar is a great kickstart to planning my garden. Fresh eye and ideas. Awesome. Very good. Remember, do you have any trees, Sharon?
I'm kind of at a disadvantage. I'm on my phone, not on my
Oh,
computer.
sorry.
So
Yeah.
I'm flipping back and forth. I do have some trees and they are, I had to take out 2 huge trees that have been here forever. I mean, giant trees. They were diseased
Mhm.
and the city made me take them out. I mean, they weren't yet diseased, but there was a disease spreading through the city and they wanted everyone to remove their trees, their walnut trees, but which is not a great tree anyway for a garden because of the toxins in the roots. But
Oh yeah,
I
black.
do have some smaller trees,
Oh.
and there is a slope. My whole lot slopes from much higher in the back and down to my front, where at the curb in the street. My whole lot is a slope. So I've got some terraces, but in my vegetable garden,
Mhm.
I have a slope that I really don't take advantage of. So
Mhm.
I think I'll water a little differently and take advantage of that slope. And in planting, maybe, I don't know if I'll put some more terraces in or what, but anyway,
Yeah.
that's what I am facing. So yes,
No,
but I
that's,
don't have any trees that are big enough to really cast a lot of shade yet,
and
unfortunately.
now that your walnut trees are getting taken out, then you have more room to grow. So that's exciting.
Yeah, a lot more sun. Well, and they are gone, and it's not it was a sad thing, but it had to be done. So that's kind of what I'm taking away is the
Wonderful.
watering.
Yes. Yes. Wonderful. And you are, Sharon, tell me again where you're growing from.
Denver.
Then, oh, that's
And
right. So
yeah, and the city harps all the time on what time we can water, how much we can water, where we can water. And in truth, residential watering takes up such a very small percentage of the usage. Most of it goes to unsustainable mass industrial agriculture.
oh my goodness, it's the opposite.
So,
Yeah.
which is also sad, but
Yeah, but you do your part, which is wonderful.
well,
Thank you. Yeah.
thank you so much for today.
Oh, you're welcome. And please, if you know anybody else who would benefit from this or would benefit from our community, please feel free to share the word. We're here to support everyone to grow more, to grow better. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Deli, for your kind words. I will see you again in our next, we have another webinar at the end of the month that's more akin to the spiritual life and reflections on gardening. But until then, I'll see you again. Bye. Thank you.